So good evening, everyone. Usual routine, speaking to the microphone, if possible. And first agenda item, apologies.
We have apologies from Councillor Walcombe.
Thank you. Minutes from the last meeting on the 29th of May. So before us, we have the minutes held on the 24th of May. Are members content for me as chair to sign these minutes? And can I have a proposer? Thank you, sir. And a seconder? Bob, thank you. Yeah. So can we vote on this? Those in favour? For? Thank you. Unanimous. Yeah. There's no real announcements tonight, except I had a webinar that I suggest you look at. Something regarding, it's called LARIG. I don't know whether you people have heard of it. Well worth looking into. LARRIG. It's the local audit, reset and recovery implementation. It's about the audit delays. So hopefully that's right, Stephen. Anyway, declarations of interest. Anyone got any declarations of interest? No, that's fine. Thank you. So we've got the first main item. Given the fact that we've got no members of the public here, do I still need to read it? I still need to read it. So let me read this. So as this item is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information, I move that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business because they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. It is considered that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So I'm asked after a seconder to that. Thank you, Sue. So can we vote on this? Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. So that is carried. So just note on the webcast, obviously, that you need to switch that off. And Matt, I assume Assuming you're turning the web. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Yes. So the next agenda item is the Shared Internal Audit Services Internal Audit Plan Progress Report. Simon?
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall that the committee receive periodic updates about the internal audit activity and the outcome of its work. This is the first progress report for 2024-25. It provides members with details of the finalised internal audit reports that were issued between May and August this year, and shows the status of all the other internal audit work being delivered during the 2024-25. I'll just highlight what I feel are a couple of key points for you. Paragraph 2.2 shows the outcome of 3 reports that have been finalised so far this financial year, including the associated assurance level and the number of recommendations that we've made. Next paragraph summarises the status of all the audits included in the audit plan for the year. 12 are shown as work in progress or finished, and a further 12 are assigned to members of the team ready to start over the coming months. There's more detail on the status of individual audits in Appendix A of the report. In terms of outcomes, paragraph 2.6 refers to the status of the current high priority audit recommendations. These are, you might recall, referenced in the progress report essentially for tracking purposes. They're shown in Appendix B. You'll see there in one of the columns it refers to a verbal update, which I do now have. The first recommendation relates to the recording, management and monitoring of software license information. The ICT team are starting to populate contract information into a database, and the notifications for upcoming expiry of any contracts has been set at 10 days, they advise. Perhaps more importantly, this has been tested and is actively working. Also, under that recommendation, as part of the ICT restructure, which Matt referred to, they'll be recruiting a supplier manager who will be progressing and maintaining the contracts register going forward. So there'll be complete oversight of all the ICT contracts. The second recommendation, which relates to software licensing policies, that's currently work in progress, with the aim of completing that by December 2024. Paragraph 2.7 onwards to 2.9 shows our key performance indicators and where we currently stand. I guess the key message to pick out of that is that there's currently no risk to us delivering an annual assurance opinion at the end of this financial year. And I think the only other thing to highlight, Chair, is Appendix E. This is a briefing paper that has been prepared by the head of the Shared Internal Audit Service. It's for all partner audit committees, not just yourselves. It essentially states that the revised global internal audit standards are due to come into effect next year, and specifically in April for the public sector. The UK public sector internal audit teams, such as ourselves, the structural differences in the new standards are not expected to be great, as we generally conform with them already. The revision, arguably, therefore, is more about raising the bar in the private sector and the public sector elsewhere across the globe. As I say, they are global standards. However, if anything does emerge from the public sector review of them, particularly where it might impact on the role of this committee, I'll report back at a future meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon. Any questions or comments by the members? No. Oh, thank you, Jeffrey.
Sorry, thank you, Jim. Sorry, I'm just trying to follow with paragraph 2.2. There were 3. Let's go back to it. There were 3 audits which were reported on, one of which was the follow-up of the limited assurance reports from last year. I couldn't quite understand what the outcome of that particular audit was, what the follow-up was. Is that reported elsewhere within this report? I couldn't see it.
No, good question. It's perhaps clear as it needs to be. When we deliver an audit, it does attract an assurance level number of recommendations. When we do a follow-up piece of work, because we're not repeating the audit in its entirety, we don't give an assurance opinion. We're essentially just looking at making sure that the recommendations that have been raised have been implemented. So that's why it says there's not an assessment under the assurance level.
So just to come back then, were you satisfied therefore that those measures that you had been recommending had been put in place?
Yes, we were. They're ordinarily fed through this committee as well if they're high priority. The medium and low priority recommendations we would look at as a matter of course as well. If they were outstanding, we would say.
Thank you. Nick or Mark, you okay? Or it's fine. Any more? No. Well, thank you very much, Simon. Another good good bit of work. So on that basis, there are 3 recommendations for this item, which are detailed on page 28. And those recommendations are members to recommend noting the internal audit progress, note the status of critical and high priority recommendations, and note the Global Internal Audit Standards Briefings paper. So members, this item is for noting and so does not require any vote for us. Thank you. Moving swiftly on then to item 7. Yeah, it's Nick. Hello there, Nick. So yes, hand over to you.
Good evening, Chair and members. Apologies for my tardy arrival. The roads from North Cambridgeshire were slightly more flooded than I expected, so apologies. So this is, I'm Nick Jennings. I'm head of the Shared Anti-Fraud Service for those members that haven't met me before. This report provides details of all the anti-fraud activity undertaken at the Council in the current year to August 2024. The report includes the work of SAFs, the Shared Anti-Fraud Service, Council officers and other third parties that we work with across the year. It reflects the anti-fraud plan agreed between SAFs and senior officers and reviewed by this committee in March of this year. And I understand in May this committee received a training session from the SAFs team, so I hope that was useful, provides you with some background to the service and the way the service works. And a bit like Simon's report, this is an update to progress report with delivery of this year's plan. So within the report itself, we talk about sections 5 to 8. We talk about the fraud awareness program that we have in place, the training that we're doing for officers, and again, picking up some of the things that Matt was saying. Some of the work we do dovetails with that as well. So when we're looking at identity fraud or what we describe as mandate or CEO fraud, so this is where it's cyber-enabled fraud rather than those cyber attacks. It's criminals using that information and data that they hold about council officers to try and infiltrate the systems to commit a fraud. So rather than attacking the systems themselves, they're trying to extract money from the authority. So a lot of the work that we've been doing this year has been around that. A lot of the fraud alerts, we've issued 20 fraud alerts so far this year across all of our SaaS partners. There's been a real focus on impersonation, CEO fraud, mandate fraud, use of false identities, and we're seeing a real uptrend at the moment around the hijacking of council tax. And you don't have housing stock, but with our authorities that have housing stock, hijacking of accounts, payment accounts, so your council tax account, your rent account, by criminals, and they're using those accounts to overpay the rent, council tax, business rates for garages, the most strangest things you can think of sometimes. So they'll deliberately overpay on those accounts using stolen funds. So false bank accounts, stolen credit cards, and then expect a refund. So they'll contact the council tax team via their electronic system, because we engage with our customers electronically now. They'll create an account saying they've moved into the property. They want to pay their account in full up front for council tax. They'll get the council tax account amended, be informed of what the liability is for the year. So a normal council tax in Band D is probably just over £2,000 a year, possibly more. Looking at Stephen for a guide on that. And then they'll pay us 15, 20, 30,000 pounds. And then a week later, they'll contact us and say, we've moved out and we have a refund on our account. We've just realised, by the way, we've overpaid because we put too many zeros when we did the transaction via the bank payment. And they'll ask for that payment to go to another account. So there's some fairly simple things we can do as an organisation to prevent that happening, but we're seeing this hijacking of accounts happening much, much more, because services we offer, particularly around council tax, is basically to put the council taxpayer in charge of their account, which makes it much easier for fraudsters to steal those accounts. So we've done a lot of training and awareness around that. Lots of the fraud alerts are about those types of fraud. We do see the usual things that we see all the time, where people are providing false information in relation to grants or council tax support or housing applications. Staff training, we've delivered additional staff training to the civil enforcement officers who are working with your your parking enforcement teams. And we did a piece of work in the summer, in June, where we were out, actually our officers were out with the civil enforcement officers and the police. But a two-sided campaign. We see lots of abuse of blue badges by third parties. So the blue badges might have been stolen, or they've been misused by family members without the blue badge keeper's consent or knowledge. So part of the campaign was targeted at that, to identify and prevent that type of activity. But we've also, again, sadly, blue badges have a street value. If you can get hold of a genuine blue badge, not that you need a genuine blue badge, because you could print one off certain websites, it's quite easy to do. But stolen blue badges have a street value sort of in excess of £1,000 in London, because if you have a blue badge, you avoid all of the zones for charging for vehicle use. So criminals like to have a blue badge so they can move in and out of the capital. So we did that campaign back in June. That was very successful. Did it across the whole county. We also did it in partnership with Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire as well. So it was a tri-county exercise, working with all those civil enforcement teams. So that got some very, very good feedback from blue badge holders. Actually, they actually like the idea of being asked questions when they're displaying their blue badge, because they also get quite annoyed that other people are misusing blue badges. We mentioned the report, the level of fraud reporting. So that's now increased to 45 allegations to the end of August. So this is where we received allegations of fraud. So these are not substantiated or proven fraud. Each of those allegations need to be reviewed and investigated separately. But from that, we currently have 32 live cases. That includes the 45 allegations we received this year and allegations that we had live at the end of last year that are still ongoing at the moment, where it's a live investigation. Estimated fraud loss in the caseload is currently £478,000. So that's the potential fraud loss to the authority. So far this year, we've only closed a small number of cases following a full investigation. 4 of the cases we've closed identified a fraud loss, a combined fraud loss of £184,000. These all relate to historic housing benefit claims where we've jointly worked with a DWP. This is quite exceptional. We don't tend to see this anymore, because the majority of the housing benefit workload has moved across to the Department for Work and Pensions as part of the transfer of universal credit. So these are quite exceptional, but we're working very closely with the DWP. They will lead on any prosecutions that result from these particular cases. We've also identified savings for the authority through the work we're undertaking with registered social landlords across the borough, where we're finding that social housing stock is being misused, where the tenant is subletting the property for a profit. And again, we've estimated that's delivered savings of about £42,000 for the council. And then looking at proactive prevention activity from sections 11 to 15, the council is signed up to take part in the council tax framework for this year. That was a very effective programme of work last year we undertook with the revenues team. the council's also signed up to take part in the mandatory National Fraud Initiative exercise in October. For members that want to know more about NFI and how that works, you can speak to Stephen because it's a particular favourite of his. NFI is a massive exercise, takes place every 2 years, and the council is signed up. We are ready to upload your data when that's required by the Cabinet Office in October. We're also using the Fraud Hub within Hertfordshire. So this is a service provided by the Cabinet Office. One of the great weaknesses of the main NFI exercise is it only happens once every 2 years. Our Fraud Hub works once every 3 months. So rather than waiting for 2 years to find a potential fraud, we're finding it much quicker. So far for East Herts this year has identified around 300 matches for review, and we're working with officers to resolve those at present. I've mentioned the Blue Badge campaign. One of the things that we do, along with the fraud alerts that we issue and the guidance for officers, the 2 monthly report that we provide for officers, is we issue, where we've identified weaknesses in systems, a bit like an audit, we'll issue an executive report. We haven't issued any executive reports so far for East Herts this year, so that's a piece of good news. And then just lastly, to finish off, I'll mention the KPIs, because at the end of my report, it's on page 50 of the report, you've got the KPI performance for the shared anti-fraud service. All of those objectives are on target for this year. The two that I'll draw your attention to is KPI 2A, which is time recording, which we had a real problem with last year. It is now working really effectively, so we're able to report accurately on all work undertaken for each of our partners, including East Herts Council. KPI 3A, which is urgent referrals. And again, any members that have heard me talk about this, our case management system, unfortunately, doesn't allow us to identify urgent referrals when we're producing our reports. It's a real problem. We're still working with our supplier for the case management system to resolve that. The assurance that you have is that we have a target to deal with all urgent referrals within 1 day. And actually, at present, we're dealing with all of your referrals within 24 hours on average. So we're sort of hitting that target by default. And again, senior officers will be aware if something's reported into us that they consider urgent, that is dealt with within that 24-hour time frame. And then just at the end of the KPIs, on KPI 6, all the proactive activity that we planned for the year. So I've already mentioned NFI, Fraud Hub, those are all up and running, ready to go. So that should be moved for green in the second half year as well. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nick. Any questions from the members or the independents? Or Carl? Carl.
Sorry for butting in here. Yeah, I'm afraid this is going to be an impossible question for you, but obviously it's interesting to see how many cases we've found and what the value of those is, and I'm just wondering what's the value of the cases we haven't found. And is there any independent research which gives you an idea of how big that pot could be?
Yeah, if I use Matt as my target for tonight, Matt produced some really interesting data at the beginning of his presentation about what the value of the impact of cybercrime could be across the UK and across the globe. There is lots of research that's undertaken to try and identify what the levels of fraud are, and we see the use of the iceberg as well. So we know what we know. I think we know some of what we don't know, and then there's stuff that we don't know that we don't know. So what we do as an authority is we make sure that our processes are strong. So again, echoing what Matt was saying, that every process that we have, we test it to try and make it as robust as possible. When we introduce new processes, we try to do the same to make sure it's robust and it's as fraud-proof as possible. Train the staff, because they're the experts, they're delivering services. So we rely on the staff to help us identify fraud. And we have the proactive activity as well. And then we also ask the public, because the public know what's going on. So again, we have our public campaigns where we're asking them, if you think there's something wrong, then tell us. And also, if you know there's something wrong, it's actually your money, this thing, and it's not the council's money, it's actually your money as a taxpayer. So it's trying to get the public on. So no, we don't know what we don't know, but we know quite a lot.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, Nick.
So just on just in relation to the figures as well, some of couple of numbers there you mentioned. So para 9 talks about estimated losses of £364,000 in terms of the cases. I was just trying to relate that to, we're about to look at a paper that says the council's facing a deficit for the year, and I'm just thinking if these estimated losses are recovered, does that help the council's financial position, or are we assuming that they will be recovered in the financial position? I'm just trying to understand the link between the work around fraud investigations and recovery of losses and the sort of financial position of the council that we're about to look at.
Is that one for me, Stephen? Yes. So where we use estimates, we're doing that for a number of reasons. One is to try and identify how severe or how important a particular investigation is and how urgently we need to deal with that. The other is that we're putting a little bit of a sort of finger in the wind, sort of, you know, try and guesstimate what that loss might be, because until we've completed an investigation, we don't genuinely know. And there might be a loss, and it might not be fraud. It might be a mistake. So I think when we're using those estimates, they're generally quite good. We've been doing it for 10 years now, using estimates, so we're generally quite accurate. What you've got to bear in mind is if we've lost the money, it's gone, it's out the door. There's two outcomes from that. One is it's lost, it's gone forever, and one is it's been recovered. Recovery in some areas is much easier than others. You know, for council tax, for example, you know, a very good council tax recovery team, they have very high recovery rates. Other areas, because the authority might have low rates of collection. All I would say is that we keep the council informed of the levels of fraud that we're investigating, and they receive reports. The various departments receive reports from us about the level of fraud that we think is in their system at any one time. So I think the council's probably making the right, you know, decisions around the value that's there. Yes.
So I think from that, what you're saying is that the sort of £364,000, we can't rely on recovery of £364,000 to help us plug a bit of our deficit in the current year.
Definitely not. Unfortunately.
Okay, any more? Well, thank you very much, Nick. So on that basis, there is one recommendation, page 47, and that is to note the progress by the officers and the shared anti-fraud services to deliver the anti-fraud plan for the council. So again, this is just for noting, no need to vote on it. But thank you very much. Do you want to go, or do you want to stay?
With your permission, yes, I'm just worried about those flooded roads on the way home.
Exactly.
Back to North Cambridge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Yes.
So if we move on now to agenda item 8, the financial management 24-25 Q1 forecast to year end. Is this for you, Stephen? Oh, it's Carl. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, I'll do this. This report outlines the financial forecast for the year 24-25 at the conclusion of Q1. The headlines are an overspend of 1.1 million in the net revenue budget and a 50k underspend in the capital budget. The detail of the revenue account forecast is shown as Appendix A, and the key variances described in detail in Appendix B. The values presented in these appendices are very disappointing. However, it should be noted that the new forecasts are prudent, and efforts are being made to reduce the impact of a number of these additional costs. These are detailed in section 2.7 of the report. It should also be noted that some of the forecast overspends are one-off items, and therefore the impact on the medium-term financial plan is less than for the current year. Appendix C details the council performance against the savings programme in the 24-25 budget. Whilst failures to achieve the desired savings in the current year are disappointing, in the majority of cases the savings are merely delayed and should eventually be realised. Appendix D outlines variances in the capital programme. It's notable that there are very few variances in this report. Many of these projects are ongoing, and at this stage the final spending outcome is unknown. The expectation is that the capital spending will be within budget. If projects appear to be under budget, it's prudent not to claim this underspend until completion of the project. In summary, it does appear the council is going to overspend significantly this year, largely due to circumstances unforeseen at the time of budgeting. Attempts to mitigate some of these overspends are in progress, and it's in hope that the year-end outcome will be improved on this forecast. The one-off nature of many of these issues means the longer-term financial position has not declined in the same way as the 24-25 forecast, and the budgeted transfer to reserves of 652,000 in 24-25 provides some buffer against some of this forecast overspending this year. I invite comments from the committee.
Thank you, Carl. Questions for Carl? Oh, Bob.
I think Carl knows what I'm going to say. In the just to set the scene for those who are unaware, this was presented to the executive, I think, and I was present for that. And the chairman graciously let me ask a couple of questions. So I'm actually coming back to one of the questions I asked then, which is in paragraph 2.7. It's the last bullet point, Charrington's house. And I'm just going to say today what I said before, really, which is, what does that mean?
Okay, so I think Jonathan in the exec meeting did try and put an explanation. But I think there are two issues here. One is that the council's responsibility for the business rates ends once the development agreement is signed for Alderville Lane, which I think the latest is that it's by the end of October, and hopefully not too far away. The second thing, completely unrelated, but within the same paragraph, or almost completely unrelated, is that given the delay to the signing of the development agreement, consideration had been given to demolishing the building. That would have alleviated the need to pay business rates. However, as part that exercise found that the cost of doing that would be too high. So that's basically just saying that it's looked at, not proceeded with, and so we move on with the trying to sign the development agreement. Does that make it clear?
Sort of. I think one of the reasons I asked the question, well, essentially there were two reasons. One is that, with all due respect to the author of the bullet point, I didn't understand what the bullet point said, but it obviously alludes to the possibility of disposing of Charrington's house, which you just right now you've not commented on. You might want to come back on that. But the confusion I got re the possibility of disposing of Charrington's house is that in other papers, not before the meeting now, there's been more than a suggestion, quite a strong suggestion, that in some way Charrington's house would be part of the revised Bishop Stortford development. I think there's some suggestion of a roof garden or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, I think you understand what I'm getting at. So, is it going to be part of the revised plan for developing Bishop Stortford or not, or what?
So Charrington's house is part of the Audit, the old River Lane scheme. So Charrington's house will be sold to, or be disposed of to City Heart once the development agreement is signed. So I don't know of any other way of disposing of it other than through that method. I don't believe there is any other plan for that. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Thank you. I just wanted to just get a bit of clarification on Appendix B, I think it is, the capital position. We've got a column which says revised budget. Is that revised from the figures we would have looked at when the budget was set back in the end of February? And if so, are there any significant variances?
Okay, I'm told that these include carry forwards from the previous year. So obviously there would have been a budget for 24-25, but there would have been carry forwards from the previous years that will be added to that to make the revised budget 24-25.
Okay, so the yeah, okay, I understand that. Okay, thank you. Just a second question, if I may. Are we like to see Appendix E, which is missing from the papers, which is about debtors? Could that be provided to the committee after the meeting?
Are you aware of? Yeah, it's not there.
Yeah, it
but-
should be there, Chairman, and the report was released, so that it should have been in the one.gov system, so it should have been there. Certainly we'll get that sorted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well spotted. Sue.
There's quite a large figure involved in the Pinehurst Community Hall, and I wondered what that was involved with.
Whereabouts is that?
In the capital forecast under land and buildings. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, the money in relation to Pinehurst is principally Section 106 agreement monies, which developers in the area have put towards improvements in Pinehurst, and therefore work has been undertaken in relation to the fabric of the structure and improvements. And also, my understanding is there will be an outside play area as well.
Thank you.
Nick.
Thanks. I've got three. Am I allowed three questions? One was relating to the rent, the Appendix E. And I was just keen to understand the assumptions that we made in these numbers around recoverability around that £2.9 million. So 1.8 million over a year old will be challenging to recover. So that's my first question, whether there's any impact on these numbers from that recoverability assumptions.
So do you want to deal with that first, or?
All the debt over 1 year old has already been, we've already made a provision for impairment in there. So anything that we do recover will be a positive contribution towards the council's finances. We have started on old debt. We're starting now to refer in waves to the Credit Protection Association, and we're hoping to get an amount of money back then, because that will prompt people into paying it. And then when if that doesn't work on the old debt, then we'll review them and look at them, and then potentially write them off. Prior to the debts being transferred to finance, licensing undertook a full comprehensive review of all of their debts. So there were a number of debts that were written off and a number of new debts raised. So we're now confident about the alcohol and entertainment licensing debtors, and we'll go through each department's debts like that. But this does take time, because the staff came in after the restructuring. We've had to train them up, etc. So it's going to take us a little while to do that, but we are taking action to try and improve debt collection. And also in November, we will go live with a brand new payment system, which will enhance our ability to take card payments, and our automated telephone payment line will be significantly upgraded. So at the moment, nobody with an X at the end of their council tax or NNGR reference can pay on that automated telephone payment line. In November, they will be able to do that. But the main advantage of it is it will give us a significant number of opportunities to put payments and processes online on the website, which we cannot do at the moment with the Icon system, where we've exhausted every single fund in there due to its age.
That's great to hear, Alex. So any recovery on the debt over a year will be upside on the numbers, which is good. So that's the first one. Second question, in terms of sort of confidence in the numbers, and there's reference made to conversations with exec officers around the detail, but looking here in terms of the forecasts for the cost savings and the comments around potential ways to mitigate the overspend, they don't fill me with confidence in terms of and there's one or two quite large cost saving areas where there's not a lot in the report around how we're doing, but it sort of says that we are on track. So I suppose my question is, how confident are we that the level of underspend won't deteriorate in the coming months?
Obviously, all forecasting is very difficult, and I think the line that's been taken with these forecasts is that they've been prudent. A lot of them are worst case scenarios. On some of these bigger numbers, there are definitely opportunities to make significant gains. It's not to say that that'll always be that way. I think we can see just from this first year, that first quarter, that some things don't go the way you expect them to go, and that can have a negative effect. But if we can get some of the mitigations on some of the big numbers, which we're looking at, then that will cover us hopefully for any that go the other way.
Okay. it's hard to judge from the narrative in the paper around the confidence level around some of the, and there are some big numbers in there, especially around the savings levels. But it's good to hear that the forecasts are prepared on a cautious, prudent basis. My third question is sort of the what if type question. So, and again, it may just be for me to understand, but if this outturn transpires to we can't make any savings and we overspend by over £1 million, what does that mean? Where will that money be found from, and what sort of issues is that going to create for us in the council?
I think in the current year, there's no great issue in the sense that we have got money that's supposed to go to the reserve account in the current budget. So obviously that won't go into the reserve account, and that's £652,000. So that's that potentially a big chunk of any overspend. Any excess on that would have to come from the general reserve. So I think this year, yeah, it will, the money will be there. That's okay. Future years obviously depends on many external factors, and also making further savings down the line. So yeah, the bigger the variances for future years, potentially that gives us a bigger savings target to make future years, which obviously could be more difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mark.
Thank you. Yes, I've just got a couple of questions on the variance in Appendix B. The depot costs increase in regard to the event. Is that a cost to the council or the contractor?
That's a cost to the council.
And in future contracts, will the contractor sort of, the council always continue to pay the rent?
Yeah.
And in the current contract, BASA have a lease with the council and pay a rent. We have agreed going forward in the next contract that we will not charge a rent, because obviously when we charge the contractor a rent, the contractor then adds that to their cost, puts a markup on it and charges it back to us. So they therefore agreed that makes no sense. So that we will not be charging rent, neither us nor North Herts. We are acutely aware and are looking for a site that is potentially able to take a depot, as Buntingford is restricted in its size and what we can do in our operations there. And also the lady in question who runs the business is now handing over to her children, and they're a lot more commercially minded than she's been. So, and the rent reviews. Anna Osborne in my property team spent a long time and worked very, very hard to try and limit the rent increases, but we see nothing but the rent increases ratcheting up at every rent review. So we are looking for another site, but obviously we need to be wary of transfer stations and stuff like that, and it's very difficult to find a site that's suitable in East Hertfordshire.
Thank you. Second question is on Beam. Obviously, it's been operating for, I guess, a month. I mean, are those figures still sort of prudent, or how's performance gone over the last sort of month?
I think from my point of view, it's too early to say. We haven't seen the kind of concrete numbers yet from those early weeks. The indications are that the numbers have not been as good as we hoped, but yeah, not seeing the actual concrete numbers.
Thank you. So last one, last one for me. On the planning service, obviously see that some planning applications are coming down. Is there not a correlation with in time that there'll be need for less sort of external support as well?
I think, yeah, it's obviously complicated because there's obviously a lag in planning. So an application comes in and you get your fee, but then the work can go on for several years. So I don't really have the information to know how long that is and how long that time lag lasts for. Yes, you'd certainly expect if there was less planning applications, that in time the workload would decrease.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Chris.
And it's just a quick question for me. I just wanted to check something around the staffing budget, actually, because I can see that there has been an estimate underspend in democratic services, housing and health, and as part of a senior management restructuring. I mean, it's quite a sizable saving, and is that considered to be a long-term reduction in staffing? Is it a short-term vacancy freeze? Are you factoring in, you know, retirement? I mean, it's unclear if that's just a one-off for this year, because there's been some kind of, you know, variance in the staffing because people have left and haven't been replaced. And if that is the plan, how sustainable is it over time? Because, you know, one thing that we're not overly blessed with probably is staff. You know, all local authorities are massively constrained. So long term, that's obviously not good in terms of our recruitment and retention policies. So I just wondered what that was all about, really.
I can probably answer some of that. So with regard to the senior management restructure, the money, the savings there were actually where we are proposing to take out and are starting to take out 2 senior head posts. So one is the head of revenues and benefits, a post previously held by Sue Tarrant, who took medical retirement last year. The other post is the head of HR and OD, another post that was made vacant when a member of staff left last year, and we chose to take the saving and to recruit to HR manager to go into that post, and that gave us the saving of just under £239,000 for this year. There is further restructuring that we are looking to do in the medium term, and we will come back and let everybody know how that's looking and what the savings are going to be forecast to do. With regard to the other posts in housing and in democratic services, both of those were where posts have been held as vacancies. And again, as that goes through, we're looking at all of those to see whether or not we need to advertise and recruit to those posts, or whether we can actually carry on without needing to use that funding.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Sue again.
I was interested to see there's a ban on overtime, and I wondered if that would have some knock-on benefits as well in terms of staff morale and retention and productivity. So that'd be interesting to see what other benefits that bring.
So the majority of the overtime was actually being worked in our revenues and benefits service. So that was most of the 200,000. And what it's not a true saving, because actually what was happening was they were using vacancy money to actually pay for other staff to do overtime. And clearly what we want to do is to make sure that the teams are fully staffed up and able to cope on a day-to-day basis and not have to rely on doing overtime or actually asking staff to work additional hours. So that's something that the strategic head of finance and property and I have been working on over the last year or so. So we've reduced it down. We have had some overtime where we've really needed it to improve performance. So we didn't obviously want the amount of time that it took us to process a new claim, for example, for benefits to fall behind a certain number of days. So we have allowed some overtime where that's happened. We've also brought in some short-term agency staff as well to cover that. So it's not a true saving, but because people just found the money to pay overtime before, but we've stopped doing that on a regular basis, mainly for the well-being of our staff as well, because we don't want them to be working the extra hours.
Okay, Bob. Okay.
Helen, just prompted by what you've just said, in another place we're quite alive to agency spend. I apologise if I should know, but in what direction is our agency spend going? Up, down, or flat?
It's been pretty static over the last 6 months. The biggest agency spend we have is in planning. And again, that's mainly because we do have difficulty recruiting at certain levels. So mainly with our principal planners, that's the area that we struggle with. So we do end up with quite a lot of interim within that area. We do work really hard, obviously, to try and carry on recruiting, and we've got an advert out at the moment for principal planners. The rest of it tends to be short-term fill. So when somebody has left a post and it's a critical post that we maybe can't do without, then we will have agency in. And for anybody that sits or looks at the HR committee, will be aware that we use Matrix, which is an organisation that really drives the costs down of agency costs. So we do whatever we can to mitigate that. And we also do have a recruitment process where if a vacancy occurs, then it comes to the senior leadership team to have a look at, see whether or not there's any other ways that we can provide that service rather than filling the vacancy as the first option. So we do try and keep a lid on it as much as we can.
But your opening shot was it's relatively level.
Yes, it does stay pretty level because the vacancy level is fairly low, although, you know, on a snapshot, you might say you've got X number of vacancies, but quite often some of those might be held by the service manager or the head of service. They might be out to recruitment. We might have offered but not yet filled it. So it doesn't always, you know, directly correlate.
Thank you.
Thank you. I actually have one question, and I know we've probably touched on this already, but the overspend, when's it likely to start affecting our decision making, which may affect the operation of the council? Is it likely to ever do that or not?
I think it always does that. I think if you're in a situation where you're spending £1 million extra, you have to take that seriously, and it affects every decision you make.
But given it's a forecast as opposed to real, is it started to bite already, this forecast?
It's a forecast, but so yeah, I mean, there's no way you can say it's going to be that number, but I think you can see the direction it's going in. So yeah, of course you have to start thinking, well, hang on a minute, you know, that means we're going to have to start thinking about next year as well now as to what savings we need to make for next year. So, and that process has already begun.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on that basis, there's two recommendations which are on page 51. For that one, yep. And those recommendations to the committee are the reasons for the net revenue budget end of year projected overspend of 1.1 million be considered, and the capital programme forecast outrun of 50,000 be considered. After a proposer and a seconder for this motion. Sue, thank you. Proposing. Any seconder? Chris, thank you very much. So for those in favour, hands up. Thank you. That's unanimous. Then it is carried. So moving swiftly on to the Local Government Association Finance peer challenge. Stephen, or is this Carl again?
Yeah, I'll do this one. Okay. So the executive invited the LGA to conduct a finance peer review challenge at East Herts District Council. This took place in February 2024 and was conducted by Andrew Hardingham, a former Director of Finance at Plymouth City Council. His report is provided in Appendix A. This was followed by a workshop between executive members and the leadership team, assisted by an LGA peer member responsible for finance. And the outcomes of this workshop are recorded in Appendix B. An action plan was then created based on these workshops, and this is provided in Appendix C, along with a commentary on progress towards the objectives. And the recommendation is to endorse the action plan in Appendix C. Members of the committee are invited to comment on the report.
Thank you very much, Carl. Questions? Sue.
Just wondered if everyone felt it was a worthwhile exercise.
I certainly felt it was a worthwhile exercise because obviously this is our first year in the administration, so it was really useful to get an outside view on the way kind of the finance process works, and yeah, particularly get a view from someone from working from a different authority to come in and sort of give an opinion. So it gave us confidence in the way things were working, as well as ideas for potentially changing things around to make it even better.
Mark.
I just wondered whether the council considered an actual sort of full corporate peer review, or whether there's been one recently or one planned for the future, or indeed perhaps individual service reviews of other areas of the council.
So our last corporate peer challenge was in December 2018, and we were due a review in 19, but that wasn't put forward at the time. We are due another corporate peer challenge, and in discussion with the leader, we should be progressing with that next year. So 2025, we will have a full corporate peer challenge.
Thank you. Any more for any more? Sue?
There was a sort of a look at the length of time decision making was taking between different parts of the council, and I know that as an audit and governance we've had discussions about having 6 meetings a year, and it looks like that was a good discussion to have because that might speed up the process and the turnaround and decision making and saving money and that sort of thing. I think that would be a good outcome.
I'm not sure whether that's a question, but yeah, I mean, obviously, anything that speeds up the process, I think, is a good thing. You know, so certainly my experience of council is that it moves perhaps because it's necessarily so, but it moves quite slowly compared to kind of like the world of private industry. So, but yeah, if we can do things to speed that up, I think that's a good thing.
Thank you very much. Oh, Bob?
Yes, we've discussed it before. I'd like to add my voice to the notion that if it helps speed things up, we should have more meetings. We've discussed it before, but yeah, I don't get that for sure.
Okay, Sue.
I found that when we were looking at the budget for the last year, we were thrown in at the deep end and had no training on how to scrutinise the budget. Can I suggest that we have some sort of training as a committee to do our job more effectively in that respect?
Interesting point. Is it something that anyone could answer here?
I'm not sure I can answer it directly for the council, but the LGA certainly do training courses that obviously all members can sign up to in finance. So I'm not sure whether everybody necessarily receives all the invites, though. That's the question. I don't know whether you see invites to those kind of things.
Bob?
If I might just say again, I mean, sensible comment, if I might say, but page 73 of the pack has a list of the recommendations from the peer review people. Some of those, I think, meet what you're saying. So it seems to me that, in effect, these recommendations are to the effect that, and just double checked it, they are alluding to councillors, that councillors, in their opinion, should receive more information or better information. I'm assuming that we will, in effect, be adopting the recommendations.
Thank you. Any more? No, I think we've done this one. So there is one recommendation. Well, there's one recommendation containing several points, but so it's endorsed the action plan on page 63, Appendix C, which implements the recommendations in the Local Government Association desktop review report and the conclusions of the workshop on the preparation of the budget. So I'm after a proposer and a seconder. Proposer, Bob, thank you, and seconder, Sue, thank you. So a quick vote, those four. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That's carried. So we now, agenda item 10, the work program. Steve?
Chairman, the work programme is in the supplement pack, which was sent from the agenda. Members are invited to comment on it and nominate training where it's to be decided. And you'll probably notice as well, Chairman, because the backstop date has been set now as at the end of December, that will mean that assets cannot start their audit process until January, which means that the accounts will probably need to be done around March time, which is why you see a whole set of meetings in the work programme with no actual date set on it. So you'll probably have to have another meeting in March to deal with the accounts.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah. Just a quick point on the October the 30th. I'm assuming that that's all arranged and everything like that, that we're going to be okay to meet that date? Good. Okay, thank you. So any questions relating to this? Bob?
Well, it's just simply, given the points made this evening and at a previous meeting, are we happy that this is enough meetings? Or would we like more? And I am remembering what was said previously by officers. So every meeting needs to be organised. I do get that, but equally, there is at least some view amongst members that more meetings would be useful.
So yes, we've obviously got the October one, and there will be another extra one in March. So could we, I mean, from a meeting perspective, we either plan it now or we'll wait until what comes out of obviously October. We'll then decide then whether we should have a subsequent meeting.
If it's okay, I'm just looking in this direction again. But clearly, we don't need to have meetings just for the sake of having meetings. So I'm not proposing that, and I don't think you are either. So it clearly needs a little bit of thought. Meetings need to be structured. There needs to be a proper agenda on a meeting, doesn't there? So maybe right now isn't the moment to say when we might have extra meetings, but there is a mood that we would like more.
Certainly. So, sorry.
So your next scheduled meeting would have been in November, but following the comments from the last meeting of committee where the agendas were quite hefty, that's why we've slotted another one in October. So if you'll see from the work programme that is more of a manageable chunk. Because of the 2 elections we've had, we couldn't have got one in since the last meeting, which was in May. So that looked to me to be the only available date to stop clashing with other committees as well. So that is an extra meeting in October, and you'll see that on the work programme. Okay, does that just clarify? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Nick?
Yeah, I really welcome the paper revised from last time. There's a lot more detail in here, which I find really helpful to understand, because we've had several conversations around content of future meetings, and this is great. I think the insertion of October meeting absolutely feels absolutely the right thing to do because of the volume and having 1 or 2 key items coming in October. The transforming East Hearts program, I think, which we've sort of asked for that, and that's great to see that on the agenda. I think looking forward, that it feels like an extra meeting in March is almost inevitable because of the quantum of activity, and so having a meeting in January and then not another one until May feels too long. But I that's sort of looking down what now is a really great comprehensive list of all the activities. So really welcome that. And there's a number of things on here which link through to the risk register that we've seen at previous meetings. And I know the update risk registers on here for October, which is great. It will be really good when we see the risk register just to understand when items on the forward agenda link back to the risk register, so we can see when we're looking at specific high risk areas on the activity plan, and it gives us a really good sense check on over the course of the next 12 months, are we looking at those key risks that we've identified and are monitoring through the risk register. And that sort of ongoing improvement in the risk register, which we saw last time, again, I think just makes it a much more sort of comprehensive view of the world going forward. So really welcome all that.
Thank you. Okay, unless there's any more comments. So on this basis, then, there are 2 recommendations. Approve the work programme as set out. So again, with the unknown dates for the other meetings, and to approve the works programme as set out in the report, and to specify any training requirements. So the training requirements we mentioned about the low LPG, and we need to look into that of how we could achieve that. So yeah, okay. And Bob?
I'm really sorry, Chairman, should have commented 2 minutes earlier. I'm afraid constitution, I don't know if an independent person is able to propose, but it did seem to me that comments from Nick made an awful lot of sense, i.e. we ought to be having a meeting in March. And I'm just wondering whether we should maybe agree on that now. And if Nick's not able to propose, I would be happy to propose that.
Yeah, I think it's more to do with when the auditor's ready to do the report, but there will be another one in March or April that we need to schedule in.
Independent, you'd be happy with that, Jim? I think I need to propose it on your behalf.
Yeah, it just feels with the quantum. I agree. I think the comments that
Yeah.
councillors have made, yeah, having a meeting in March, April feels, yeah.
Okay, so may I kind of on behalf of the independent person formally propose that we have an additional meeting in March or April as appears most sensible at the time.
Okay, well, it's in the programme, but it's down as March to May.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But if you're talking about March or April, then we'll bring it
Yeah.
in. Then.
Is that okay? Again, I'm just looking at Nick. I think we should stick to March and April, given the advice we've had from the independent.
But again, pending the auditor's availability or whatever. Yeah.
So anyway, so I've made more of this than I needed to. If that needs a proposal, I'm proposing it. But if it doesn't, then we move on.
Right. It's in the work programme. So if you're happy with the work programme as it is, I don't think we need to propose it. It's there. It's just we can't be more specific about the date at the time. Yeah. But as Stephen said, we don't know when the auditor is going to be ready to deliver that to us. Okay.
So after being quick consultation there, we'll know a lot better in November what date it's going to be. So it's going to be a case of we're either going to put something in there that we will have to change, or we'll wait until November and then firm up on the date. So we could have this discussion in November and set it then. Are you okay with that, or?
There's clearly quite a common view, isn't there, along the member side of the table. Certainly speaking personally, the sooner something gets into my diary, the easier it is for me to deal with it. So just being purely personal, it would work much better for me if we were to say we'll put a date in, let's say for April, and as Councillor Hart's just said, if nearer the time we can't make that date because the papers won't be ready, then we'll revisit the date.
So
I think in the end, if I may, can I propose that we do put a date in for April now, but on the basis that if, as we get nearer April, it becomes obvious that that isn't the right time, we can rearrange that date. So in other words, we don't wait until November, we do it now, and then maybe in November, you might already know whether April will or won't be viable. But that's where I'm at. So I'm.
So is that, sorry, Bob, yeah, is that feasible then?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't give you a date just
No,
now, but we can say April.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would just need it.
So yes, Bob, if you're willing to propose. Okay. certainly. And seconder for that? Thank you, Chris. So voting, those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous then. Okay, yeah. So obviously further to the proposal, we will approve the works programme plus the proposed element as set out in the report, and we'll specify any training requirements. So proposer? Sue then, yeah. Seconder, Chris, thank you very much. So that, sorry, Steve. So yes, it has to be before the 14th of April, whatever, I suppose. So yes, so that's carried. And did we vote on that? Oh, we didn't. So proposer, seconder, Chris. So those in favour? Yes. So that's carried. Thank you very much. As there's no urgent items, that concludes tonight's meeting. And thank you very much for everyone coming. And the time now, 8:53. 8:52. Thank you very much.